Hello and a very warm welcome back to the channel. My name is Ben Hocking and I hope you're having a good time over the holidays. Nikita Mazepin, the gift that just keeps on giving. Apt given the time of year. This video is going to discuss the end of the investigation into his actions. It's been a few weeks since December 9th when the video was posted on social media. Haas, of course, from that point on, were conducting what they referred to as an internal investigation into the actions, and they concluded that on December 23rd, they have finished their investigation and any results will be kept internal. Slightly disappointing outcome, but one that I'm sure is expected. I don't think anyone would be overly surprised that this is the outcome. This is how it's gone. But yes, I'm just going to talk through what I think about it. And I was tempted to do a video sort of on the 23rd as this news broke. I decided that with sensitive issues such as this one, it's probably best to wait a few days just to allow yourself to process what has happened, make sure that what you think is actually what you think and isn't just an immediate reaction to what you're seeing. As it turns out, on this occasion, not a lot has changed, but here we are. And just to make it perfectly clear what I'm talking about here, I'm going to read the exact statement that Haas put out as a press statement, and they put it out on their Twitter as well. Haas F1 team would like to reaffirm that Nikita Mazepin and Mick Schumacher will form the driver lineup for the 2020 Formula One World Championship. As per the team's previous statement regarding the actions of Nikita Mazepin on December 9th, this matter has now been dealt with internally and no further comment will be made. So that was sent 5 minutes past 1 British time on December the 23rd, so rather conveniently, just as everyone is sort of packing up for the year and as everyone sort of gets into holiday mode. It's disappointing, and as I said before, expected. If I had to put money on exactly how this would go down, Haas have pretty much followed it to a T. It's difficult to say. I mean, from a pure moral perspective, and this is my view on it, it was an action worthy of him being sacked. No doubt in my mind whatsoever on that. I find it difficult to say definitively what the actions of Haas should have been without having insider knowledge of their financial position. As we know, Nikita Mazepin's father, Dmitry Mazepin, is supplying the team with a lot of finance. How much that is unknown. What percentage of their overall finance that is also unknown. And I think the biggest problem here is that even if the situation isn't exactly as I'm about to lay out, the fact that it's a possibility in the first place, that is one of the key problems here. And that is that Haas might well have made this decision trying to balance morals and finance. It's tough that that's the situation that might well have developed. Of course, I am not 100% certain as to what has happened here, whether someone could have stepped in instead of Dmitry Mazepin for the Haas F1 team, whether the finances of the team are actually fine and they don't necessarily need Dmitry Mazepin, but there is given how 2020's gone, given we know that Haas aren't one of the richest teams on the grid, it is definitely a possibility that the finance provided by Dmitry Mazepin has been the difference between Haas surviving as a team in 2020 and collapsing completely. It's a possibility. And if that is the case, then suddenly you have to juggle Mazepin's actions along with hundreds of jobs that could potentially be at risk. And that's a problem, because if it hasn't played out that way, then fine. But if it has played out that way, the fact that it can even happen like that in the first place, that is an issue that needs to be dealt with, first of all. But from a pure moral perspective, from what he has done, it was wrong, 100% wrong. And if he had been fired for his actions, I would certainly not be sat here defending him whatsoever. I think they would have been completely justified in letting him go. They haven't done. That's the decision that they've taken. I actually want to focus perhaps more so on the on the transparency of what they've done, because we know what Mazepin's actions have been for a few weeks now, but how the investigation has been dealt with is much fresher. Of course, they only revealed this on December 23rd, so they have essentially decided to disclose no details, no information whatsoever as to what they have done. There's a big problem here, and that is that people fill in the gaps one way or the other. People make assumptions. If you don't outline exactly what you've done, people will fill in the gaps however they see fit, and it will generally work to whatever their narrative is. You know, there are people who are supporting Nikita Mazepin. What percentage of people is up for debate, but there are people supporting Nikita Mazepin. Through providing no detail whatsoever on what they've done, they have given them the opportunity, those people, they've given them the opportunity to fill it in with whatever they see fit, which is probably Haas have done an investigation. They've decided that there's nothing wrong with what Mazepin's done. We should move on. Case closed. Nothing else to say. And they will say that the investigation was thorough, and they will say the investigation did everything that it needed to do, and that everything is absolutely rosy and fine. On the other side of the coin, you're going to have people who are definitely against Nikita Mazepin and what he's done, and they are going to fill in the gaps and say that Haas have skipped over this entirely. They haven't done an investigation internally whatsoever. They just wanted to make it seem like for a few weeks to the press that they are doing something to combat this, when in actual fact they never had any intention to do anything whatsoever or take any action whatsoever. One side of that is going to be right, one side of that is going to be wrong. Providing no detail whatsoever means we cannot tell. I would hazard a guess as to which side is going to be right and which side is wrong, but there's no definitive way of telling if there are no details whatsoever. And even if you are on the correct side of the assumption, you're still filling in the gaps to the details of that. You still don't know exactly. You know, if Haas haven't done this investigation very well, we'll take that side for the moment. Maybe you're right in saying that, but you can never be sure as to what the investigation has actually been, like what they've investigated, whether there are any actions that they've taken, if they're going to keep everything private. Transparency versus being opaque is very clear. You need to be, even if you give bullet points as to what you've done, you don't necessarily need to go into a massive dossier. You don't need to put in a 10,000 word essay on what you've done, but just at least put some context there so that people aren't given the opportunity to fill in the blanks. It's something everyone does, so don't do it. And lastly, just before I go, I wanted to focus on one more point actually, and that is, and I could be wrong on this, I could be wrong on this, but my opinion is that the objective has been missed here somewhat, or is getting lost slightly. So Nikita Mazepin losing his seat is something that I agree should have happened. At the same time, I do not think that it is the objective of what is happening here. There's a very clear difference between objective and the means by which you achieve an objective. You know, I want to quench my thirst. That is, quenching the thirst is the objective. The drink is the way in which you do it. Yeah, I'm hungry. I want to cure my hunger. That's the objective. The means by which to do it is eating something. You need to keep the two separate. Mazepin losing his seat, for me, is not an objective. It is a way in which something is achieved. And that is the overall message of what has gone wrong here. For me, and the objectives, there are a number of objectives to this, but just to name the most prominent ones for me, the objectives here should be, Nikita Mazepin should know what he has done is wrong. Nikita Mazepin should be dissuaded from doing this again. And anyone who might take inspiration from Nikita Mazepin, given his position, must know that they can't get away with this. For me, those are the objectives of this whole saga, of this whole scenario. The objective is not, for me, for Mazepin to lose his seat. Imagine a scenario, and this is completely hypothetical given what's happened. Imagine the situation where Nikita Mazepin has lost his seat, and that is the one and only action that Haas have taken. They've done nothing else. Is that box tick, everything done, goal complete? For me, absolutely not. Because what have we learned? What has he learned more specifically? Well, if I do something like this, I will lose my seat. He should not be dissuaded from doing something like this in future because of the consequences. He should not be dissuaded based on, I'll lose my seat if I do this again. He should be dissuaded because he knows it's a wrong thing to do. That's what's the heart of the issue for me, really, is that any form of punishment, and this goes a bit wider than Formula One, there should be some sort of rehabilitation, some sort of education at the centre of any action taken, any punishment taken. Nikita Mazepin losing his seat, again, I agree, is something that I think should have happened, but by itself, it doesn't do enough. Because Nikita Mazepin does not go away from that situation thinking, what I have done is wrong. He just knows at that point, if I do that again, I'm going to lose my seat. That's why I shouldn't do it. Why you shouldn't do something should be based on the morals of doing it, rather than the consequences of if I do it. If that makes sense, if you're following me on this. The objective here is to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And the objective is to make sure that other people don't do this again and that they understand why they shouldn't do it again. That's the last point. Just getting him out of the seat by itself doesn't do it for me. So I don't know if that's been lost through everything about him losing his seat. I completely understand the movement and I'm completely in support of it as well. I just think that there is another element to this. There is that element of what are we trying to achieve here. I think it's been slightly lost, possibly. Again, happy to be corrected on that. Maybe I'm wrong there. And just actually on the whole movement as a whole, I'll round off here. The hashtag we say no to Mazepin. Given the timing of this, and social media for me has a lot of downsides, it also has a lot of really brilliant upsides as well, and this has shown one of those really brilliant upsides. Imagine this situation happens, let's say 20 years ago. You could probably even go further, 10 years ago, but let's just say 20 years ago this happens. Given the timing, December 23rd is when they release this. It's months until the next Formula One race. It's months before even journalists get the opportunity to speak person to person with team bosses and with people within teams. Pre-season testing is probably the next example of that in a few months' time. Given the timing of all this, it would have been very easy for the impact of all of this movement to have been lost. They released that statement on December 23rd. That is where it's at its hottest. That is where it is most relevant. And maintaining that relevancy from December 23rd all the way through to pre-season testing would not have been very easy without the influence of social media and what this has been able to do. The We Say No to Mazepin. It means that people have kept up the momentum with this. They've kept going on it. And I'm sure, there are many great journalists and I'm sure they will ask the right questions when they get the opportunity come pre-season testing, the first race of the year. But I feel as if the momentum of all of this would have been lost slightly without the influence of social media bringing these people together and saying that, no, we don't agree with this, we don't support it whatsoever. I just like to sound off with that because I think it has been a really good movement. And without it, 20 years ago, honestly, I think it would have lost a lot of its power come the next opportunity that journalists have to speak to the likes of Günther Steiner and senior members of Haas. But I'm going to round that one off there. I'm going to leave it here. Until the next video, I hope you stay safe. Hope you've enjoyed. My name's been Ben Hocking. Keep breaking late.